Lagi expert syariah law kan. Syariah law kan, in built environment, bukan syariah law untuk orang cerai kahwin kan.
Dulu cerai kahwin.
Syariah law kan. Nak mention nama ni.
2 minit lagi kita start, doktor.
Siapa?
Ni. Dah 9 minit. Master Arts PG Diploma okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat pagi kepada semua partisipan kita. Okay, so jadi welcome to our webinar series today, 27th of May 2021. Okay, so we bring back to you our webinar series Islam and the Built Environment with a new and fresh speaker from the architecture perspective. Okay, we will look into the house design from the Islamic perspective, or to be specific, it is about the application of Islamic principles in house design from the architectural perspective. Okay, before I go further, I would like to introduce our speakers today. Okay, so he is Assistant Professor AR Dr. Razali Arifin. Okay, so his academic or professional qualification, he graduated PhD Architecture from University of Queensland, Australia in 2010. Okay, so, he also have a Master in Arts in Architecture, postgraduate diploma in Architecture, and Bachelor in Architecture from University Sheffield, United Kingdom, 1992. So basically that is the qualification of our speakers, okay, and his professional qualification. His expertise in the day lighting and healthcare design and planning, okay. So Dr. Razali Arifin, Dr. Razali Arifin is an assistant professor at the Department of Architecture, Kuliah of Architecture and Environmental Design, International Islamic University of Asia. So currently he is holding a head of department for the Department of Architecture. Okay, he obtained his Doctor of Philosophy in Architecture for the thesis entitled Healing Architecture, the study of daylight in public hospital designs in Malaysia from the University of Queensland. Okay, he has been active in presenting his work at local and international conferences, including the 8th World Congress and Exhibition on Design and Health in Kuala Lumpur Convention Center, and at the first Saudi Forum for Planning and Design of Hospitals in Riyadh. His works also been published in the Arab Geographer. Okay, so in Arab Geographer, a Scopus Index journal, he has earned several awards, including Gold Award at IIM Research Invention and Innovation Competition, and the prestigious Royal Institute of British Architects RIBA University Awards from British guests. Okay, and then the Pilkington Building Science Award and Greatest Degree Award in 1992. Okay, so at CAAD, Dr. Razali Arifin has held 2 academic administrative positions, namely as a Deputy Dean of Academic Affairs and Deputy Dean of Student Affairs. Okay, year back in 2014 and 15. Okay, he also served as project director representative in the refurbishment of the IUM Rectory building, a member of the organizing committee of the First World Congress on Integration and Islamicization of Acquired Human Knowledge, and as election commissioner for the Students Representative Council election 2014-2015. Okay, so professionally, Dr. Razali Arifin has worked as an architect for 5 years prior to joining the academic fraternity in year 2000. He is registered as a graduate member of the Lembaga Architect Malaysia, LAM, and Malaysia Institute of Architects, PAM. He currently serves as an accreditation panel member in the Majlis Akreditasi dan Pengajian Seni Bina Malaysia. Okay, with that introduction, I would like to over this session to our speakers today. Okay, Assistant Professor Dr. Razali Arifin, our architects today. Okay, so falyatafaddal mashkura.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I hope members of the audience can listen to my voice clearly.
Slideshow.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Azila, for your kind introduction. And Alhamdulillah, we managed to meet through online webinar. And today's topic is about application of Islamic principles in house design from architectural perspective. But before I go into the topic itself, I would like to give us a little bit of remark that we are now in the situation where it's a challenging time. So let us make dua to our brothers and sisters in Palestine, and also we make dua to our nations that hopefully with this COVID-19 challenge and pandemic will be over as soon as possible, because I don't like to talk when I'm facing myself. So I think it will be interesting that we all looking forward to get back to our normal life. And I think this is a challenge for us, that an opportunity for us, also an opportunity for us to reflect ourselves and return to the Almighty and make dua very much that that everything will be normal. Okay, this topic of what I'm going to deliver today is about Islamic principle in house design, and I'm not the first one who doing research on this. There are many people now start trying to endorse or trying to go into the detail or deeper meaning of Islamic principle, especially in the professions of architecture, creativity, and designers, all in the big environment. And somehow or other, I found the literature, we arrived at the almost similar findings. And today my topic is a little bit different, and trying to share with you how the Islamic principle in the design of housing can be applied from the architect's point of view. Yeah. So I really hope that I can share this with all of you, and we hope that the knowledge that we gain will be useful, whether in practice as a student. As I'm well aware today that the audience today, there are many multiple background. Some of you are from JKR, some of you from the IPTA of higher learning, doing architecture and other environment as well, other built environment, other discipline. So I hope that I'm not, the only person who would like to share this aspect of Islamic principles. And I hope in the question and answer sessions, we can exchange notes and ideas on how best that we can pursue the Islamic principles in the context of the environment. My presentation will take about 30 to 45 minutes, and perhaps after that we start the question and answer sessions, and hopefully we can have a smooth question and answer session. Try my best to answer most of the questions. And mind you, before I start doing this topic, I have consulted several people. You can see that the ilmu that Allah gives us have multiple dimensions. I have consulted those who are in this field, for example, Dr. Azila on the Sharia law or Sharia expert. And I also consulted Dr. Zaitun because her PhD is privacy in housing. And I also consulted some other people who I think that can give validations of my findings and my thought today. Okay, so I tried to move my cursor. Oh, okay. The contents of my lecture today, basically there are three parts. Before we practice or apply whatever knowledge in the built environment or in design, I think it is best that we manifest or we understand ourselves, we position ourselves, reassure ourselves that what we are doing now has to do with the Tawhidic approach and the creator and so on. So the first part is actually trying to understand where we are in relations to our belief, in relations to Islam, and so on and so on. So I'll try the brief topic in that area. In the first part will be the manifestation of Tawhid through environmental design. It will be very brief. And the second part is that deriving from our research background, which is from NAPREC Grant, where Dr. Azila is part of the team. And I think it's a professor, Dr. Harudin was the part of the team as well with me, Dr. Sharina and Dr. Putri Farah. So those are the research that I would like to share in the second part of my presentation. And when we come to the application as what the topic today, I think I would like to have a discussion rather than showing you the exact applications of how the Islamic principles is applied in the design and planning. So that was my plan today. So I will show some of the examples that I think need to re-evaluate and so on and so on, based on the Islamic principles that are highlighted in item number 2. And perhaps the last but not least is the findings that I would like to enhance here in this webinar session. And before I proceed to the my presentation, I would like to qualify myself that there is no perfect examples or there is no perfect solution 100% that the built environment or the house design is following the Islamic principles. I would say when I say not 100% doesn't mean it is not good at all, but there are many areas that we can evaluate and analyze the situation and to improve further, because as you are well aware, the perfect creation is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we as Khalifa or human being have always do mistakes and imperfection. We always try to perfect ourselves in doing so. So that is the qualification that I would like to make. So if you think today is answers, what are the how do we apply the Islamic principle? It's not in totality. I couldn't find what we call this house that in imperfections, yeah, that following them. There might be some, but the percentage is higher if you were to give a percentage. So there are some examples that I would say have to improve, and there are many things. This is what we have to highlight. This is what I intend to highlight here, where we can improve ourselves in our practice daily in the built environment. I am well aware today that the backgrounds of my audience are from JKR, who may be doing the evaluations on the mass housing and so on and so on. So allow me to begin my presentation. In the manifestation of Tawhid through environmental design, we have to understand what we call as the philosophical view of architectural and environmental design, which is a body of knowledge that encompasses all the creative and professional fields that is relevant to the making of human habitations and the integration with nature. That is the philosophical idea of what the environment is all about. And from the Islamic viewpoint, I think we need to, in our doing, we need to express one's servitude to the Creator, Rabbul Alameen, through the ideas and concepts in the environmental design. We cannot segregate. We only express our Creator in the prayers only. But I think today I try to reassure you that what we are doing are actually in relations to appreciations and our recognitions to our Creator. And from the Islamic approach, if we were to see the manifestation of Tawhid from the Islamic approach, is to be grounded based on the very foundation of Islamic understanding. Tasawwur Islamiyah, if the look of it, the framework of Islamic understanding. And in order to understand the Tasawwur Islamiyah, we have to have a basic, very minimal basic methods of interpretation. And it has to be anchored on accepted opinions of Islamic scholars like Ibn Khaldun Muqaddimah and the works of Sayyid Muhammad Naqib al-Attas and all the al-Faruqis. And even for your information, brothers and sisters, that when I do this presentation, I do refer a lot from the Quranic verses and so on and so on, in order for me to yakin with what I'm doing has to do with Islamic principles and the appreciations to the Creator. And only then the field and knowledge of the Islamic urbanism and environmental design will enrich, inshallah. So that is a process that we have to, what I'm trying to say is that there is a need of ijtihad, discussion, agree to disagree, and on certain things. But the fundamental is the Islamic principle. One Islamic principle has to be debated, argue, relate, and to all aspects has to be incorporated. So in doing that, Tawhid requires man action. And is an undertaking that symbolizes his acceptance to the I cannot see this. Is an undertaking that symbolizes his acceptance to the oneness of the Creator, who has created man as part of his universal plan for the world. So this is, I think some of you must have come across this, but this is a relationships diagram or Tawhidic approach in man in this world, that man as a Khalifa, as a vicegerent on earth, vis-a-vis we as the professionals have to accept that whatever we do as a amanah in this world, and the relationships of our doing has to do with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and with the environment and man to man. We cannot run away from this relationship. So if you see this relationship, that there is what we call, when we talk, when we relate ourselves with Allah, the Creator, it is we regard ourselves as servant. Okay, and when we talk, or when we have a relationship with man, it is about social, economy, politics, and so on and so on. See? So when we talk, when we relate ourselves with the environment, it is our ilmu, our applications of our knowledge has to be imparted as much as possible to the best of the outcomes. So while we understand ourselves as a Khalifa in this world, if we accept that, then what is the relationship that we are doing now? I mean, every day we've been praying to the Almighty, and we always say this Surah Al-Fatiha. I'm trying to relate that we have been saying this all this while, every day, 5 times at least minimum. That Surah Al-Fatiha has a very deeper meaning of our present, and it has to do with this Khalifa, this Tawhidic approach. If you see the verses 1 to verses 4, it is about the recognitions, the praise to our Creator. So, and in fact, the tadabbur that I learned from my group is that there are 3 parts in the Surah Al-Fatiha. He says the first one is glorifying the Creator. We have to rely on the Creator. That has to do with this diagram. And Ayah 5 stated clearly that it is you we worship. It's Allah that we worship, none others. Right? So when we talk, when we communicate with Allah, it is about humble servant. So, and we ask for help. And that is where our doing in everyday life, we have to rely. And that is, you always hear that when people at the end of their talk, at the end of the meeting, they say that whatever good things come from Allah, and whatever shortcomings from Himself. So I think that is a very relevant remark. So we ask ourselves, and we always want to be guided into a straight path in the verse number 6. So in the end of the day, what is it? The Al-Fatiha indicate that we have to be, we want to be categorized in the first part of the ayah number 7, which is the path of those upon whom you have bestowed favor, that Allah redha, and not the second part, not of those who have earned your anger, Allah murka. No, we do not want into that. And the third part is even worse. Those who are astray, far from our belief or our tawhid. So we want to be in vigor. So Al-Fatiha that we have been seeing has to do with this man as a Khalifa. So I start with this surah because this is Ummul Kitab. When there is in Ummul Kitab, means this is our guidance. This is the mother of all of Al-Quran, of Ayah. So from this, it has to do with our practice. Number 5 and number 6, that is our part, our role in this world, or as a profession. Okay, brothers and sisters, be assured, yakin in Islam and avoid doubt. And I would like to quote, when we talk about quote, it has been repeated 51 times in the Quran. And one of the earliest version of the Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 2. This is the book about which there is no doubt a guidance for those conscious of Allah. Okay, and Zalikal Kitabul La Raiba Fihi Hudal Lil Muttaqin. So that is a very important. So what my presentation today has to do with the Quran and Hadith. And I think that would be the beginning. That's the first part of my presentation, to reassure ourselves that are we on the right track or not. So I think we are. Okay. So let's move on. If you look at some of the images that I showed to you today, is the outcome of design outcomes. Either it is urban, either it is interior designs. These are the source that I downloaded from general public, and there are different types. This shows that Allah has created us with a lot of interesting creature or human that can come up with various ideas and so on. So the faces of design outcomes is fantastic, you know. But what's behind this is what different from these all these. It is our belief or our Islamic principles. Our intention when we start designing is to do amal ma'ruf, amal bil ma'ruf, al-nahi al-munkar. So amal dalam bahasa Malaysia selalu kita sebut amal ma'ruf, nahi munkar. So we must always believe that what we are designing for the human habitation is for amal ma'ruf, nahi munkar. So what are the criteria in order to do that? There are three. Number one, the person who want to do that, to carry out tasks, this has to have an ilmu. He has to have an ilmu. Number two is an amal. This is what you have been doing. All of us been doing in the built environment, that we have been designing. We have been doing that. We are doing amal, practice. And if we do good because we are doing for people. So the last part is akhlaq. We have to avoid corruptions and so on and so on. This is what means by our profession is always about amal ma'ruf and wal munkar. Avoid we call that. So can be defined as exclaiming people to do kindliness and to leave out all the bad behavior. To measure of what we are doing, either it is a fair or cruel, haq or batil, we should refer back to Al-Quran and Sunnah. This is what I'm emphasizing. Anything that is right in Sharia or in Sharia will always right, although it is opposite to our passions and want. Similarly, if everything is stated in Sharia as illegal or wrong to be done by Muslim, it can never change until the end of the day. So we have our grounds where we are talking here. Okay, thank you for listening so far. Now I go into the second part. The Islamic principles in house design. Where is my basis? I put note here that the concept. Sorry. Oh, yeah, forgot to recording it. The Islamic principles in house design, I would be basing, my base would be the Maqasid al-Sharia, the objective of Islamic law, which has 5 essential aspects. And I put note in my presentation here, the concept of Maqasid was first developed by the 12th century or theologian Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, and in reference to the 5 fundamental aspects of human life. First, is the protection of life, the preservation of faith is the most crucial that lead people to embrace the presence of Allah in every human undertaking, acts or omissions. Now let us ask ourselves whether what we are doing here has to do with Maqasid Sharia designing. Yes, we do. Sometimes we designed for area for prayers, and we design appropriately for the functions. We must make sure that that the functions is working very well, and so on. Okay, so that is the preservation of faith. Number 2 is the preservation of self. Enable a person to embrace the greatness of Allah, thus directing him to perform his role as Khalifa religiously towards his fellow men as well as the environment. Number three, the preservation of intellect. So what we are doing now, I mean, in the built environment, there are 5 elements. So preservation of intellect pave the way for people to acquire intellectual skills and knowledge and to be able to praise right or wrong. The preservation of lineage involves the marriage institution, principle of inheritance and family relationship, as Islam pays great attention to on societal life. So the preservation of property outlines certain behaviors and ethics regarding economic transactions and business dealing in fair, non-corrupt, equitable distribution of wealth, wise use of natural resources and environment. So this is really relevant. So in understanding all these ways, or in the dealing with these 5 elements or 5 essential aspects of Maqasid Sharia, there are 3 categories that are being laid down: Daruriyah, Hajiyat, Tasniyat, and Tasniyat. Sorry about my pronunciations. So Daruriyat is a must. So I would like to give an example here. So it is a must for us to have a home, a house to stay, a house to live, because in doing so, then we can preserve our faith. We can do prayers. We can the 5 elements that the of Maqasid Sharia can be exercised. So daruriyat is a necessity, is the first level of category. It is a must. Hajiyat is a complementary, where when we have a house, then what are the things that is a complementary? It is a should have kind of thing. It has to have a room, for parents. It has to have a room for siblings, for the children. And tasniyat, okay, we have a curtain, that is embellishments, the good things of the rooms, of the spaces. So I hope you understand how do we want to apply so far. I will re-emphasize later as I go along. So from the 5 principles of 4 is essential, and then come down into the 3 different categories. And all these are governed in our daily life in the Islamic law, comprising of fiqh al-ibadat, personal law, fiqh al-munakahat, family law, fiqh al-mu'amalat, and fiqh al-jinayat, criminal law. So there is the law of Sharia that these have to be practiced under the realm of Iman, Islam, and Ihsan. I hope you understand so far. I keep reading these, and to ensure I always recall myself the relationship of it. So that's why I start with this heavy topic first. It's very difficult to explain, but I have here with Dr. Azila to assist me all the time to explain further, because I'm not from this background. But as an architect, we should understand this background or fundamentals. So this is a conceptual ideas. Normally architects like visual, you see. So I use reference from Dr. Azila reference in 2015. It's about conceptual ideas of the 5 elements of Maqasid Sharia, juxtapositions with I can't see. With family, societal, and criminal laws set against the Islamic values and morality of Iman, Islam, and Ihsan. It must be noted that the 3 groups of principles are closely interwoven and interconnected. So, to understand this diagram is that the first part, I don't know whether you can see my cursor or not. So the first part is the faith, self. Number 3 is intellect. Number 4 is lineage, and last but not least is wealth. And within that, so and on the edge of this, the second triangle is Islam, Ihsan, and Amal. and iman. Okay, at the top there, and all these, the three category that I mentioned just now. If you want to express this, we have to follow the three categories. If you are given a choice, daruriyat, we have to prioritize daruriyat, the complementary hajiyat, and tasniyat, the embellishment. And all these is governed by fiqh, fiqh ibadah, fiqh nakahat, fiqh muamalat, and fiqh jinayat. Okay, so that's about it. Okay. Now, when we talk about house design, when we talk about homes, this is the ayah in Al-Quran, Surah An-Nahl, Surah 16, verses 80 to 81. Okay, 80 to 81. It talks about a direct words in the Quran saying about home and what does it mean. And if I were to search in the Quran, how many times home have been mentioned in the Quran? It's 70 times based on my search. And the homes in the Quran is described or is portrayed or described as Jannah, as home, promised home in the hereafter, and community as home, all those kinds of things. There are many dimensions of home being mentioned in the Quran. But I pick up this Surah An-Nahl, verses 80 to 81, specifically that to talk about homes. What is Allah? Let me try to read the interpretation. Allah has made your homes a place to rest and has given you tents from the height of animals. Because I'm the co-host, I have to do all this while I'm talking. There is a icon coming up saying that to admit and to admit. I'm sorry about that. So Allah has made your homes a place to rest and has given you tents from the height of animals, light to handle when you travel and when you camp. And out of their wool, fur, and hair, He has given you furnishing and goods for a while. And verses 81 says, and Allah has provided you shade out of what He created and has given you shelter in the mountains. He has also provided you with clothes protecting you from the heat and cold, and armor shielding you in battle. This is how He perfects His favor upon you, so perhaps you will fully submit to Him. So what does it mean? What I understand, I'm not very good in tafsir. It is all nikmat. Oh, come from Allah, nothing else. You know, we have to work very hard to gain our, salary and so on. But everything comes from Allah. Allah has allowed us to work in order to fulfill the maqasid Sharia, the fulfillment of our being. Okay, so that this ayah is very important as a basis of my presentation. So because we are talking about house design. So the house sometimes is called Maskant in Arabic because it offers its inhabitants a chance to take a break from the demands and pressure of the outside of the outside world and concentrate on physical, mental, and even spiritual recuperations. The Arabic verb in sakana, which means to come down, to repose, to rest, to become quiet and tranquil, to feel at ease with. Hence the word sukun and sakina means calmness, tranquility, peacefulness, serenity, peace of mind. These are related when we talk about homes. And normally, in this tranquil situation of housing arrangement, the internal and external play a very important role. Human well-being, for human well-being and spirit is built out reflecting the preservation of faith, self, intellect, lineage, and property, which is the ultimate aim of Maqasid al-Sharia. So what I'm trying to do now is trying to derive from the Quran and through the literature that I did in the research that I mentioned earlier, NAPREC research grant, talking about the Islamic principle in house design. In terms of Islamic jurisprudence, the organization of family institution succumbed by housing provision is mostly governed by fiqh al-munakahat. That is munakahat on that essence. The fiqh outline Islamic principle related to family life, such as sacredness or family life limiting the relationship of sexes outside of the family circle, protecting, raising, and educating children, public health, enjoyment of life, and others. So that is what when we design a house. Professor Ahmad Farid Mustafa in 1986 translated the homes or the Maqasid Sharia or the implementation of Islamic principle into physical form in the kind of privacy, building heights, building forms, external spaces, architecture, and social interactions. These physical environments are the concern of the general Sharia principles for what house design should be. So, on the other aspect of fiqh al-mu'amalat, governs the community life in kind of human dealings and commercial transaction in Islam. The physical manifestation can be implemented in neighborhood, town, city, bigger scale or planning entity. So in this regard, the companion Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas has narrated that the Messenger of Allah once said that 4 things contribute to happiness are righteous wife, spacious home, righteous neighbor, and comfortable means of transport. Alhamdulillah, so far, syukur kepada Allah, 4 ni semua ada wife, ada rumah, ada neighbor, and ada transport. Alhamdulillah. I do not know about you all because you cannot interact face to face. I would ask this question. I hope and I pray that we all have all this, you know. So, and another derivation that in order to arrive to the Sharia indicators, Islamic principle is this ayah Surah An-Nur, Surah 71, verses 28, where clearly we can interpret or we can directly understand that from this ayah, my Lord, forgive me and my parents and whoever enters my house, the believer and the believing man and believing woman, and do not increase the wrongdoers except in destruction. So house can be regarded or is regarded as a semi-private social place is mentioned in these Quranic verses. So the verse implies a concept of visiting our friends for good purpose of ukhuwah, social bondage, inshallah, as well as inviting people to our house. So this COVID-19 is really a challenging time for us to visit all, even our parents, you see. So we make dua. That's why I start my presentation. We make dua that the situation will change quickly. Amen. Thus, it gives rise to the importance of appropriate house design and its surrounding. So another derivations that I make is that there are many Islamic scholars have laid down a few basic criteria regarding houses in Islam. Okay, the criteria are based on the concept of Islamic urbanization, where the residential quarter is part of the focus in contemporary urbanism. The emphasis of these criteria is, as mentioned earlier, man and the creator and man and man. So it can be divided into 7 parts. Privacy. A house must be capable of protecting a family. The importance of observation on the relationship between man and mahram. See, when you work in other places, the first thing that you have to find is rented house, buying a property, or where to stay. So it is very well. So in order to settle in a place where you are working, so you have to have a house. So this how one of the criteria is highly discussed is a privacy in a house. Cleanliness. Of course, you want to be you want to make sure that the house is clean, and cleanliness in many aspects. All this cleanliness is part of iman. Waste disposal, drainage system, and separation between bathroom from the toilet. So this is re-emphasize what we are doing, the relationship with Islamic principle. Third, the right of neighbors. You do not want to be stressed with bad neighbors, but we have a right to have neighbors, to a community. We prevent light of air from entering the openings of the neighbors. So we have to have understanding that neighbors need privacy, and also need secluded within their families. In the house also, we need a specific area for guests, giving respect to the guests. So prohibits from constructing a house with feature of extravagance, emphasizing wealth, pride, opulence, or arrogance. So when we talk about number 5, it has to do with socio-economy of the country. All right, but we always refer to our practice that Allah encourage moderation in our doing, or in our our buying, or our need, as long as moderation, inshallah. Facing the Qibla, this is maybe the question in your mind. How do we have to, because sometimes we have to refer back to some fatwa or tajheed on this aspect of Qibla. Okay, house should be constructed to the values of Islamic arts. Yeah, we encourage or that some Islamic feature or interpretations of Islamic feature to be in the house, so that it re-enhance or remind us to the Creator. Now, all those these Sharia indicators validated this house of the Prophet, peace be upon him. The characteristic of the house of the Prophet are written by Associate Professor Dr. Sufai Omar in his website, that has a similar key indicators. I use these descriptions to validate the Islamic principle or Sharia indicators that I found in my literature. The key indicator for Sharia compliance, and this is summarized, is on the left, on the blue column here, is the space, and where is it in the narrations. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him, make his house more spacious, and bless his sustenance. So it's true, this is a space is a confirmed indicator. And number 2, space and hospitality. So big and spacious were some houses with their courtyards that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to accommodate some of his guests or visiting delegation in them. Okay, and modest and humility, some of most often referred to furnishing elements in the Prophet's houses: a bed, a mat, blanket, curtain, or of a black haircloth. Okay, so and so on and so on. So my point here, sharing you with these narrations, is that to validate the Prophet's house with all the indicators that have been mentioned in the Quran, so it is true now that the privacy, cleanliness, religious compliance, safety, security, hospitality, size, privacy, humbleness, and modesty, space are all relevant to be deduced. Now, next agenda is the concepts. I arrived to this concept. Conceptual model of Sharia compliance indicator as a guideline on designing or evaluating whether our design is the correct path or not. So we have a house which is a daruriyat, which is a vital need, as I mentioned earlier. And this, of course, we all know that in order to have this house, we have to have a structure. We have to have a roof, walls, window, doors, lighting, and colors. There is no doubt about that. So, and another aspect, it has to have Hajiyat, which is the requirement. It has to have size. It has to have appropriate spaces and appropriate material as well, or suitable material in that sense. So I regard that as physical. Okay, and then the third part is the tasniyat, the embellishment. So I categorize this in my research as a psychological enhancement to the physicals and daruriyat that we have. Privacy towards modesty and humility, safety and security, cleanliness and health, hospitality towards betterment of social and culture. Now, having said that, we must understand that all this is based on the Maqasid Sharia of the 5 main objectives. Okay, so I hope I explained well with the diagram so that where is our position. Now, before we go into the third part of my presentation, now before I go into this, and I'm not happy at that time during my research. We also do this, we do a framework. Where are all these Sharia compliant indicators in relation to faith, in relation to self, intellect, lineage, and property? Now, there you are. We have identified the appropriate surah that talk about size, talk about self, like size in relation to faith, appropriate size for upholding religious compliance with Allah. This is to re-emphasize again, validate and keep validating that the Sharia indicators are correct. So when in relation to self, Surah An-Nahl, ayat 80 to 81, and intellect and so on and so on. Yeah. So this is what we have been doing. We must make sure. So on this slide is talk about focusing on the physical aspect. So size, space, and materials. So all these are there in this framework. So another aspect, which is a psychological aspect, and we also do the same thing. And then these are the ayat that we try to match where we are in the Maqasid Sharia. And Alhamdulillah, it's true enough that a lot of our deduce or derivation of the Sharia compliance are all in the ayat of Quran. Now, you may have think by now that all these Sharia compliance are common that you have seen, isn't it? That you have practiced. But the difference is that our meaning, deeper meaning, that where are the roots? We always refer in the practice that feng shui. I don't know whether I pronounce nicely or not, but I do not know where is the grounded. But because we are Muslim, I think it is best that we relate ourselves with Al-Quran and Sunnah. So that's what we are doing here. So in that seventh component of Sharia compliance, 2 main aspects have arrived. So there are explanations. I have 3 explanations. So in these slides, are we doing okay with the time? We have how many minutes? 30 minutes?
30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay. So in this, after deducing the Sharia compliance, we re-emphasize that these are the summary of the Sharia indicator. Yeah? So the next slide will actually try to simulate, and is validated by the experts. What does it mean? I mean, let's say we have a house, Daruriya, where is it? Whether it falls into Daruriyat or Hajiyat or Tasniyat. In a house, for example, if we this is agree to disagree, but this has been validated by 7 expert panels. Some of them based on my literature, and there are also architecture in this expert panel. So true enough that the living, dining, kitchen, bedroom 2 and bedroom 3, these has to be in Daruriyat column, and 1 minimum toilet. We don't worry about the space and size and so on. Relax first. So we just trying to understand how do we derive the Daruriyat, Hajiyat, and Tasniyat. And then let's talk about toilet 2. whether it's really necessary to fall into daruriyat or tasmiyah. So gas area, and it is a complementary hajiyah. Okay, washing area falls toilet to gas area, washing area, drying area fall into hajiyah. Now, what fall into tasniyah? Tasniyah. It's a storeroom. Why? Yes, it's important because it become an embellishment to all this. I'm not saying that it's not important, but if we don't have the budget, by all means do the daruriyat and hajiyah. Right? So far, I think I hope you understand. Now we go into the this is a summary again. Physical, and we are going to focus on this. There are many other factors, but we focus on the 7. Okay. So now we talk about size, right? Elaborations on the integration of Islamic principle in the house design and planning. In my research, based on literature review that I carry out, these are the surah that relationship that has a straight interpretation or direct interpretations with size. Size in relation to appropriate dimension of a space is significant to ensure the space is functional as intended. The space with appropriate size may provide sakinah to dwellers, and one can perform his obligation to the remembrance of Allah. Surah Al-Ankabut, it says that recite and follow, O Muhammad, what has been revealed to you on the book, and establish prayer. The establish prayer means need a space. Indeed, prayer prohibits immorality and wrongdoings, and the remembrance of Allah is greater, and Allah knows that. So in practice, we always talk about appropriate size. In housing, we have several layers of type of housing. So I do not want to dwell into that. There is a lot of committee arrive to rumah rakyat, rumah Selangor, and also all those kind of things. So I would say it is a very important indicator. And in this size has to be economics that we have been in practice. And the 7 principles of universal design. I hope Professor in this audience as well, in the audience. So Professor has been championing of universal design. MS 1184, established in 2014, says is very important as well. So we have to have, in relation to size, in practice, we have to search the availability of guidelines for mass housing. Used to be rumah PPR 650, 750, and so on square feet. So the most important thing is the socio-economic. If you got a client who have a better socio-economic, you have to establish the client brief. So client needs statement has to be derived. So I will show you one photos that is really disturbing. Sorry about that. This is very funny, where this is not economic at all. Please, I hope not from the audience or not from us. I think where the door has to be carved in following the WC, mashallah. We shouldn't be doing that. Okay, so talking about size, it is the duty of the professionals in our role to search and understand the availability of the law and so on and so on. So these were my reference at that time: Town and Country Planning Act, Street Drainage and Building Act 1974, Uniform Building by Law 1984, and Jabatan Perancang Bandar dan Desa. But the reason I show you this, we did a case study of the similar PPRT in Klang Valley, and we found some interesting facts. So what stated in the Act is that given the size, okay, habitable rooms bylaw 42 and kitchen bylaw 42 as well, and bathroom bylaw 43. So area for the first room is 11 square meter, and second room is 9.3, third room is 6.5, and the minimum width is 2. I don't mind to be corrected if my knowledge or my latest information is not the same. But this is a summary from the UBBL 1984. Height is 2.5 minimum. This is minimum. Okay. So kitchen, those are the areas, and the natural lighting and ventilation in every room designed for residential purposes should be provided, and not less than 10% of clear floor area of such room, and shall have opening capable of allowing a free uninterrupted passage of air of not less than 5% of such floor. Okay, by law 39. So this is a summary from the UPBL. Now, as I said that I promised to show you the case study. I shouldn't put. I regret. I shouldn't put this, but it's okay. I think it's a close discussion. PPR Kampung Baru Air Panas and PPR Intan Baiduri. Now, why I go into that case study? Because that is the crux of the problem. I mean, the most challenging in research or in proposing, we have to solve the crux of the issue. When we have a better social economy, a client, we have better social economy, then no issue about space. But this is the typical layout or typical floor plans that with the provisions of living, dining, master bedroom, bedroom 2, bedroom 3. So they have fulfilled all some of the criteria. Kitchen, toilet 1 and 2, utility 650. See? So and both PPR have similar specification and typical unit. But when I go down and measure, so these are the look of it. It is not nice to see, but as long as when I interview them, they are syukur, happy. At least they have a house to live in, you know. But the environment is not that appealing and welcoming, you know. So these are the issues that we have to address. Look at the 650 and 750, whatever it is where the place to dry their clothes and so on and so on. Susah. So, but one interesting feature that when we do a really measured field study, we measure the space, we realize that bedroom 1 did not comply, even though by 0.1. Maybe when the architects do the design, is center to center. When I do the measurement, is finish to finish. So maybe, but I did not blame. But it's just a discovery. Okay, and bedroom 2 is 5.23. Where is the plan just now? So this is bedroom 2. Okay, this is master bedroom here, and so on and so on. So bedroom 3 is 6.6. Alhamdulillah, fulfilled. Kitchen 4.7, alhamdulillah, comply. Toilet 1 and toilet 2, those are comply. So these are discovery that we found in these two PPR, similar belief, but short of small area. Okay, space. The second Sharia indicator is when we talk about space, it is about in Sharia, it is about space for ourselves, space for parents, and most important thing is the separation of mahram and non-mahram, spaces for parents, brother, sister, and relative and guests. So a home with spaces of religious ritual, that is also important. And these are the Surah An-Nur, Surah 24 verses 36, that says such needs in most which Allah has ordered to be raised, and that His name be mentioned therein, exalting Him within them in the morning and in the evening. So it means that a space has to be provided in home for appropriate size on space. So when we talk about space, it's about provisions of spaces. What are the provisions? So these are the diagram sourced from Zulkifli, Rosemary, and Rory Bice. So it says that self, family, relative, female guests. So these are the privacy levels. So reference is made to the 3 categories. We always have this category to be based on. So the impact, if you do not have a space, that is what my research finding is, that there is a psychological, mental, privacy, social and social issues, prayers, hospitality space, and so on and so on. So that will be a great impact, especially we know here that there are a lot of social issues in the PPR, houses. But it's okay. But but if you have other projects for housing, so you have to fulfill the new and future space requirements. Now we need to have a quarantine room, whether it's not a new one or subject for discussion. Maybe not necessarily. So we also have to respond to the urban needs, like urban farming for sustainable sustainable living, flexible space, and others. So number 3 indicators is the material. When we talk about material, this is the we call this Al-Tamidi, Muhammad ibn Isa in 1999 says that terjemahan, tidak ada hak bagi anak Adam melainkan dalam beberapa perkara, iaitu rumah yang didiami, pakai yang menutup aurat, dan bekas roti dan air makanan. So this give a clear indication the material. The use of locally sourced material rather than expensive imported materials embodies design, humility, ideas and principles on which sustainable living should be based. We know for the fact that when we order material, China has produced a lot of cheap material. But some of my conversation with the practitioner, they said that even though you got cheap, but it did not conform, or in the long run, the material is not durable, or is not long lasting. So they always have problems, So when we talk about materials, the considerations for selection of materials is to achieve the appropriate, suitable, and affordable. These are the three. It has to be appropriate to the functions that we design. It has to be appropriate to the kitchen, what kind of materials, toilet and veranda, and prayers, what kind of materials. Some, we argue this require further research, and we found out that some most of the prayer area use carpet. Whether it is good and bad has to be evaluated. Safety and security, privacy, is on maintenance, and others. These are so. An examples of image. These masrabia is shown because this can be used as to solving issues of privacy. Lights come in, and that would solve. Okay. So privacy, this is the most interesting part. Privacy is very critical. There are two ayah from privacy. It has been mentioned in the Quran 16 times. Have been mentioned. So Al-Ahzab, Surah Al-Ahzab 33 verses 33, and abide in your houses and do not display yourself as the display of the former times of ignorance, and establish prayer and give zakah and obey Allah and His Messenger. Allah intends only to remove from you the impurity of sin, O people of the Prophet's household, and to purify you with extensive purifications. And in another ayah, Surah An-Nur, verses 58, O you who have believed, this is very important, let those whom your right hand possess, and those who have not reached puberty among you ask permission of you before entering at 3 times, before the dawn prayer, when you put aside your clothing, at noon, and after the night prayer. So these are indications, or clear indications, that privacy is all about. Okay, these are 3 times of privacy of you. There is no blame upon you nor upon them beyond these, for they continually circulate among you, some of you among others. Thus Allah make clear to you the verses, His ordinances, and Allah is knowing the wise and wise. Now, when talk about privacy, I have examples. I've been used to live in these quarters for 10 years before I have my own house. Can you imagine how poor I am now? I was. So this is a visual privacy. I want to give an example, a case study. I don't have to mention the building, but this is a quarters for professionals. Um, so I took these floor plates. I don't have the floor plan, but smart enough that I took the floor plan of the fire exit plan. So I found out that some of the elements in this plan is, is good. For example, that the door are not meeting each other. You know, so that is very good practice that fulfill. But what is not good is that washing area. As I go along, see, so this is the doors. Okay, doors is very good. No issues. And when look at another aspects is that the washing area, you can see that while I walk along the corridor towards my house, used to be my house, not now anymore. So I can see or I can directly see the washing area. You know, that makes me both party if they are doing that make it uncomfortable. Maybe. Okay, so you can see that people are trying to modify. You can see one side, of course, is either vacant or not. Even somebody was doing that, they are open, and another side is trying to do put some curtains for privacy. You see, so this has to do with layout, and because of the natural ventilation, so there is air well from there to the roof. Right? Okay. So before I forgot to inform you that the privacy has three categories: visual, acoustical, salah je tu saya minta maaf nombor dua, TI, and olfactory privacy. Visual has to do with visual privacy, acoustic has to do with noise, and olfactory is the smell. Some people only stop at visual and acoustic, but I think some literature that I found that they have to, you know, they have to emphasize another smell. It's also a privacy required there. So another examples case study that I deduced is well, the owner is here, but based on the visit that we made in Kelantan, so these are the room that has been done. So I wouldn't say 100% Sharia compliant, but a little bit of tweak can be done in order to fulfill. But we must also recognize that they provide 3 bedrooms, whereby one for the parents, one for sister, and one for brothers, which is very good. You know. So, but visual privacy can be improved. How do we? I tried to sketch. So at this point, when they enter the door, you can imagine yourself that there is a straight vista to the kitchen. So I do some amendment that the view can be improved if the lines of wall of the master bedroom is shifted in the middle, and this is my thinking, you know. So these are the ways and technique that we can use and to evaluate the significant. I think we have been doing that, you know. Okay. So the diagram, and this diagram, the third one is about visual, acoustic, and is what. So in order to solve the acoustic problem, we have to have a double layer. But this is the examples from the literature. It may not apply in current situation. Okay, I purposely put this image. Is from Watt's house. Have a look. This seems interesting. It's a renovated house, the terrace house, and among the houses of this terrace, so it appears a very interesting materials and elevations with open, you know, you can view in and out. But you see at home at night how it looks like. So it's quite interesting. But do you think? Do you feel comfortable? I don't know. Is for us to discuss. You know? So olfactory privacy. It is about odor, about smell. Olfactory privacy also plays an important role in the control of smells or odors produced in kitchens. Some traditional Muslim homeowners in the Middle East commonly use incense to disinfect the house and control or the olfaction in order to achieve the olfactory privacy. So although the Quran does not explicitly discuss the use of incense, some statements in hadith imply that incense is a good traditional practice to purify the home and a medicine to treat tonsillitis in children. The practice of removing shoes is prior to entering a host home is another representation of a guest's attempt to minimize any pollution and to maintain a pleasant odor with the home. This is what our culture is about, but it is encouraged. So safety, the 5 and 6, I normally combine this safety and security with cleanliness. To give an example, even one aspect, there are many Sharia indicators can be applied. So safety, these are the Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 1 to 7, and the cleanliness, Ash-Shams, verses 9 to 10. So these are the pictures that we can deduce. Some of the examples of traditional house would suffice to fulfill the Sharia indicator. So this is a sketch of mine. In this sketch, I have deduced that that the toilet should be a clear indication whereby the dry area and the wet area should be separated, should be clearly defined. If you can contain the wet area only for the shower, that would be good, because all these areas, even though we have fittings of bathtub, but that can be dry on the floor, you know. So all these, the red area, the yellow area can be dry, and the wet area can be really focused. And one thing that I would like to highlight, if you achieve the dry and wet area in the toilet, I don't think we need to have a drop at the floor. So this is my thinking and my proposal. I have done this in my house. Yeah, Alhamdulillah, it works. And some of the drop to the wet area is drop instead of another what we call bundle that raised. But mind you, this is not OKU toilet. But if it is OKU, the drop at the wet area could be gently ramp up into the wet area, and certain economics has to be done. So this is my thinking. In this toilet of design, you can employ several Sharia indicator because once you have dry area and wet area, you presume that you try to avoid people being slippery, you know, with appropriate use of material. So what I put notes here, a sufficient fitting has to be there. You know, it cannot be one fitting and then you travel to another. We have to be one enough fitting according to the needs. I have how many minutes? I'm almost done. 5 minutes. Okay. Floor traps. Floor traps is very important. I'm sure in this layout you have to think one or two floor traps. One is for the dry area and one for the wet area. And ventilation, of course, there is a window can be opened. Non-slippery materials. These would fulfill the, as I said just now, safe when you are in the toilet. Visual privacy and acoustical privacy. Most of the toilets, your neighbors can hear what you're doing in the toilet. I mean, the noise of the, what you call that, water. We know, oh, somebody is in the toilet, you know. So I do a little sketch here as a second option. If you do not have these luxurious 4 fittings, you have three fitting, you still can apply the dry and white area. So that is So I do encourage that there is no drop at the door and straight to the dry area, and then the wet area is on that side. I have employed this, Alhamdulillah. The cleanliness as a Sharia indicator is achieved. So similarly, if you are trying, sorry about the small sketch. So if you have a tree fitting where you have one room and one room, you still can employ the dry and wet area as well. So this is the photos that indicate what I have been doing, a little work that we need a lot of thinking. And I also try to take this picture. Mind you that windows is very important in the house because there is a relationship between an excellent visual view from a room. Windows treatment in tropical climate, I believe, is best to be recessed with concrete coping or cantilevered concrete shading device. So what has been in practice, you can see that this the first photograph at the top left there. So there is no recess, very minor recess. So look at the rooms, it will be hot. So that's why the curtain is applied. So when on the right hand side, the figure where the concrete coping is there. So it is very important not only for shades, but it's for cleanliness. So because it's almost difficult to clean the window to a certain extent. So this is the apartment that I come across on my way to Selayang. So they play a lot of extended concrete ledge, which I think is a good idea. If I talk to someone who have been living apartment for the rest of his life, they realize that this extended of ledge is very, very important for not only for shadings, but is when you recess the window or glass, then it will be cleanliness. Okay, that's my thinking. So safety and security again, and the same building that I visited, you can see that the walls is because of poorly treatment. I propose that for this wall on the right hand side, I think we can include some elements of what we call that roof lines and so on and so on, and this compartment beam compartment. It requires a lot of thinking in terms of reposition and placement where it's best to be located there. Okay, so hospitality, I leave this to image that that the house can be used or function for hospitality. This is a space in the Rumah Kutai that we hospitated. So I wouldn't say it's a conclusion today. I would end my presentation with a preliminary findings. The need to re-emphasize our understanding on the Islamic principles and the Sharia compliance for the design and planning of housing design. I'm still learning, despite of how old I am. I'm still learning where the applications after doing research on this. It will be interesting. So by doing that, it enhanced my manifestations of our tawheed to our Creator as a deeper meaning and fulfilling our ultimate responsibility as the vicegerent on the earth, as we always cited the verses 5, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, in Surah Al-Fatihah. So number 2, we have to achieve the balance with the daruriyah, hajiyat and tasiniyat. So we have to achieve the balance. What is the balance? In the outcomes of incorporating Islamic principle in housing designed according to the Maqasid Sharia must be achieved. We cannot be championing privacy all the time without knowing that other aspects of the elements has to be there. When we really worry about, what I'm trying to say here, balance here is that the maslahah of the ummah has no houses. We don't talk about privacy yet. We are poor. We do not have. So the government has to make sure that the provision of houses, mass housing, is done, is carried out. Then the architects who do that, who have the job to do the mass housing, is important. So the balance here is to have the house. Don't talk about the elements first. Have the house first. That is daruriyat. And then when we design, then we try to improve. And especially in the mass housing, it's difficult. I'm sure there will be questions on how do we achieve all this with the 650 square feet. But that is what I said, balance. Give the priority in your thinking that, well, I may not achieve this, but I achieve that because of certain priority in functions. Take into consideration the limitation. This is what I've just said. And last but not least, is the Sharia indicators should serve as guidelines in the design other than housing. The aspect of adequacy, suitability, affordability, and quality should also be intertwined in the application. With that, I acknowledge all these people in making sure my research and my presentation today is successful. I thank to these people. I thank you to the audience for being very attentive, and I hereby submit myself for question and answer session. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much to Assistant Professor Architect Dr. Sarazali Arifin, okay, for such an enlightening lecture, or I would say presentation today. So I must admit this is quite challenging topic for most of the professionals. So basically, when we talk about Islam and the built environment, it is about integration, Islamization of knowledge. So in these particular cases, nobody can claim themselves as a professional, but actually we are working together from the professional point of view, from the Sharia point of view, how we will find way to integrate these two actually. So it's quite challenging, but I think Dr. Sarazali has done a good effort, a good job in presenting to us the title of the for the title today, okay, Islamic Principles in House Design from the Architectural Perspective. So, while Dr. Sarazali is preparing for the answer and questions, so let us see what been presented by the speaker just now. I would summarize it as Dr. Sarazali actually establishing the needs for the integration of Islamic principles in house design. Okay, so that is the main thing done by Dr. Sarazali just now. The first part of his presentation actually he tried to share with us on the needs of us as a Muslim professional, Muslim architect, Muslim town planner, Muslim quantity surveyor, is to embrace the Islamic principles in the built environment profession for this particular topic, house design. Okay, so because having taught this for 24 years in the field of architecture, I would say that if person asks me what is the whether the professionals need to embed the Islamic principles, I would answer that it is fardu ain. It is fardu ain to Muslim architect to implement, to embed Islamic principles in their design. Okay, because we cannot say anymore that this is fardu kifayah, because as a Muslim architect, you are the one who learn about the technicalities of architecture. Okay, so we cannot expect someone else to do that. Okay, because they are not by that profession, they are not learning about this. Okay, so that's why on that basis we establish this kind of webinar series, and then we have it in the Kuliah of Architecture. This is our approach, the Islamic approach, where the integration of Islam and the built environment is highly promoted. Okay, so having said that, so we can see the needs to this integration of Islam and the built environment, in particular for today's topic, that is house design. Okay. Secondly, the speakers established on the Islamic principles that will be implemented in the house design. Okay, this is quite a heavy when we need to understand the Sharia perspective, okay, the Sharia perspective. Having said that, basically, just to simplify the discussion, as a Muslim architect, we need to know the fiqhul ibadah, fiqhul munakahat, fiqhul muamalat, and fiqhul jinayat. Okay, when we talk about fiqh ibadah, it is about molding of oneself. We're talking about pronouncement of shahada. We are talking about salat, about puasa, zakat, and hajj. But if we study the kitab fiqh in relation to the fiqh ibadah, we will find taharah, that is cleanliness, is the first bab, is the first chapter in the fiqh. So if we learn about taharah, it talks about types of water. It talks about that's something that we can relate to the pit environment, basically. Okay, so that's why in the presentation just now, we can see how the speaker emphasized on the cleanliness that will give effect kepada design tadi. So that is about fiqhul ibadah. That is about our relationship, individual relationship with the creator. So how we are going to manifest the individual relationship in terms of design, in this particular case, the design of a house. That is the first thing that the architect or the professional have to bear in mind whenever they design a building, or in this particular case, a house. So they have to contemplate how the relationship between man and the creator could be manifested through the design, okay, of a house. That is the principle, that is just one principle that we derive from the fiqhul ibadah, that we can translate it into the design of the house. Okay, we move on from the one individual Muslim, we move on to the fiqhul munakahat. Fiqhul munakahat is about a development of a family institution. Okay, because in Islam, when we talk about fiqh munakahat, it is talking about from one individual now become another individual in the form of family unit. Okay, husband and wife, and then plus the children. How they will go about their life. So this their marriage life. So there is house in one home, that we call it one home. So that's why it in designing a house, the architect also must think about the family life. What should be an ideal family life from the Islamic perspective? Okay, so that also been presented by our speaker just now. Okay, because when he revealed to us, in Arabic we call home as Maskant. Maskant is derived from the word sakina. Sakina means a peace of mind. So it is quite a challenge to our architect to translate what do we mean by peace of mind, what kind of design that will respond to the peace of mind in our house. Okay, so that is from the fiqhul munakahat. Okay, another Islamic principle that we learn is about from fiqhul muamalat, because the house is not free from the socialization. Okay, from the socialization. Okay, when we say about socialization, it is socialization among our family members and our socialization with the outsiders, our neighbors. Okay, so that is how the design will give effect to all these principles in Islam under the fiqhul muamalat. And then the last is one is fiqhul jinayat. Fiqhul jinayat, when we learn about fiqhul jinayat, it is about how to create a design that will contribute to the safety and security of the house and then the residential in that particular area. So having said that, by learning what are these four fiqhs mean in Islam, we will be able to derive Islamic principles. Then from those principles, it can be translated into our design. Okay, that is about the Islamic principles. And then the last part of Dr. Shazali presentation is on the implementation, where he shared some of the case study, okay, taken, what is the do and don'ts. That is what we hope from this presentation, because I know dealing with all the professionals, and normally they will want to see the theory and practice. Otherwise, what will happen that there always be a claim like this, because initially when I joined this faculty way back in 1997, normally there will be a claim that what the ustaz and ustazah can do is just a theory. Okay, so that I learned through time. Sometimes I would register my feedback or my response is that the theory will remain as a theory if we are not practicing it. Okay, so in order to practice it, we need to collaborate. We need to work together with the professionals so that the theories can become a practical thing. Okay, so that's why having 24 years here, I would like to see the collaboration, the togetherness between the professionals with the Sharia scholars to work harder in terms of integration of human knowledge in the environment. For this particular topic today is in the house design. Okay, so that has become the main agenda of Kuliah of Architecture and Environmental Design under the current leadership of Professor Architect Dr. Abu Razak Sapian. Okay. Okay. I think with that, I think we will pass the session to the speakers for the question and answer series. Okay. Before that, I just want to share with all the audience. I think this is quite a good, two good books for us to refer. Both are 2017, Pembinaan Rumah Kediaman Menurut Perspektif Islam by Usim. And then also we have also Rumah Teras dan Keserasian Budaya Masyarakat Malaysia. This is Malay, Chinese, and Indian. I think reading these two books, it will equip us with a basic knowledge or at least intermediate, if not advanced knowledge on the integration between Islamic principles and the design of our houses nowadays. Okay, with that, I pass the session again to our speakers, Dr. Shazali Arifin, for the question and answers session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zila. Just a couple of two or three items that I want to inform you. The implementation of Islamic principles, I think Dr. Azila reminded me yesterday to highlight here is that even we know for fact that there are types of water, musammas, am I right? So we must make sure as an architect that the placement of the what we call this the water tank, water supply has to be secure so that it is not what we call that dirty by binatang and so on and so on. And also we must make sure that the water storage is not hot, because it's hot, it falls into the category of what Dr. Azila mentioned to me yesterday. Mudarat pada kulit. To that extent that we can implement those kind of Islamic principles. So please, brothers and sisters, if you want to ask me question, I try my best. If I can't answer, I pass to Dr. Azila.
Okay, so shall I read the question here? Okay, so I think we have about 15 minutes to answer the questions. Okay, the first question is by Datin Novina here.
Okay.
In traditional Malay house, buildings are added on modular basis by needs and affordability. So how do we derive the categorization of those space daruriyat? What if the client feel the store is a need and not an optional space?
Yeah. Okay, I would say, I have to read again the question.
The store.
The store area. All right. Yes, I think if, as I said initially, that was my interpretation that the store is under the falls or the category of tasniyat in the embellishment, because at that time of research that I tried to simulate that the socio-economic is the worst case scenario. You have to bear that in mind. Now, if the client insists to have this, obviously, then we have to integrate what we, as a designer, as a designer or as a creative designer, we can have storage whereby within the cabinet or within the integrate with the sofa or bedroom or beds and so on and so on. That is another way of looking at things. There are many show on the commercial side of it have made those promotion that makeover house or something like that. So I realized, no, talking about storage, I think let us reflect. I mean, some of us have been to Japan. They have a very functional and useful space whereby they integrate all this storage within their spaces, the spaces that they have. I think it's possible. Okay, it's possible. So as I said just now, the diagram that I made, it is made, for example, that if the government has certain allocation for the mass housing, so I think at that point the storage falls into tasniyat. The most important thing, the daruriyat and the complementary hajiyat, it just should have. So the one that is nice to have. I hope I answered that question. Then another question.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shah. Okay, another question from architect Dina Ismail. In my experience of designing surau and masjid, one of the Sharia compliance required to be fulfilled is not to share the wall between wet and dry wall. The absorption of dirty, wet water not suitable in regards to cleanliness aspect. What is your opinion? Shall we implement it to housing design?
Okay, when we talk about dry wall and the wet wall, if that what I can understand, dry wall and as long as that is my opinion, as long as the cleanliness is achieved, all right, and subject to the cost and also the potential. When you talk about housing design, also another layers of question that I have to put: what type of is it mass housing, or is it landed property, or is it the application of drywall? But the point is that is to achieve cleanliness and ease maintenance. So that is the most important aspect. Now, in regards to cleanliness, as what you said, so we do not have the exact. Perhaps one day, if we meet Architect Diana, we can talk about this. Remind me. Then we can see what are the. It's a very interesting question that has to be applied in a certain. For the one that you give example, the building typology is surau. You see. So if you were to think about whether the implementation of dry and wet wall is possible in the housing, that has to be experimented and tested, and whether the need or not. I think as long as my concern here is that the cost of whoever the owner of that house is okay, and so on and so on, that's fine to me. And of course, we know that the drywall sometimes has certain characteristic, a nature that cannot be flexible and certain thing. And the placement of the drywall also has to be cleverly located so that achieve the privacy, achieve the what we call the acoustic, all sort of things, so it is a very intricate that require a kind of simulation and exploration. I really hope I can answer you as of now. So perhaps one day you can post email to me and see with the plans, and let's on the aspect of materials. So in that case, there are 3 to 4 elements of Sharia indicator that we have to fulfill. Thank you, Architect Diana, for the questions.
Yeah, I think this question is quite relevant, because to me, I would agree that that requirement be extended to the house design. Okay, but then it becomes a challenge to an architect how to put it in terms of design to separate between a dry and wet wall. But looking at the current housing design, sometimes if we say that toilet in the master bedroom, because it becomes the norms now, toilet in the master bedroom. So maybe it can be overcome by materials used, for example, the strong waterproofing, for example. So it really needs a look into it, but we really hope sometimes we can consider it for the medium and high cost, but we really hope this thing may also be done at the low cost housing. Okay, so it's really challenging, but we must do our level best. Okay, for the next question by Datin Novina again.
Yes. The Mustafa, the host to everyone. Mustafa Kamal Zulkarnain, if we are given a 10-minute Sharia compliance, is that a question? How would you organize, Dr. Razali? That is a question to me. A 10-minute presentation, and I have to present like a 10-minute one. Like there is a technique. For example, we have to give pamphlets, and the key factors has to be understand. Because this is, you must understand, when we talk about Sharia indicator, it is not a solution, it's a process. And Dr. Zaitun reminded me that in order to achieve visual, for example, if you cannot achieve, there is a requirement, added value that you have to in. For example, if we go to a taman, for example, where the planning is back to back, or sorry, mirror image. So when the door is confronting the door, so and you can see your neighbor, right? Or sometimes you can, if there is no curtain, you can still direct what they are doing, and so on and so on. But that is where the modification, I would say, according to the term that Dr. Zaitun used, is regulating the space. They have to modify in such a way that the requirement of privacy is achieved. So as long as there is no the 10-minute is the kind of time given, but I think we have to promote the Sharia compliance elements. So how do we promote? Either to pamphlet, and I give a very detailed detailed explanation whenever we are given more time. So I would like to answer this Yazrin, I think. What are the possibilities of revamping our architecture education, especially for Islamic university like UIA and USIM, to make it compulsory for all architecture students to go through 2 years of studies in the field of fiqh, tawhid, and tasawwuf, as without a strong understanding in these three, cannot achieve the design Islamic architect. Okay, Yazrin, this is a very good, I think it's a, Yazrin, that I am now 51 years old. Okay, I have to declare now. You see, in order for me to be liking or passionate about what I'm doing is correct, all this while, when I practice in Johor Bahru with DC Architect, and their bread and butter is housing, all right? So, and obviously in the School of Education, we cannot, we did not fully understand what is Sharia compliance. In my university, I'm talking about Sheffield. So when I come back and then I start to understand the beginning, there is a process of evolution of understanding of Makasid Sharia. So for example, we have to understand the minimum basic, where is private, what is semi-private, and what is public or area. So that is a process. But I think, I don't think it is a compulsory that we have to impose in each university to inculcate this. As of now, we must understand. So I think it is much more useful and meaningful to the Islamic architect if they understand and they search further rather than imposing. And because each university or in this discipline of architecture has their own niche. and they are governed by another layer of authority to fulfill other needs of the university. So I beg to differ on that, on the compulsory kind of thing, because you go back to Islam. We are born in Islam. We are born in Islam. We are syukur about that. So our obligation is based on realizations, and it's not by, because Islam says that agama you, agama I, agama kita. So tak ada paksaan dalam agama. You must understand that. We have to apply that. I would go for willingness, sincerity, passion. The realization, the compulsory, the needs come much more better rather than So even though I've been teaching in UIA for more than 20 years, and same with my colleague, and then when we trying to ask a simple question about Islamic architecture, also susah untuk student kadang-kadang nak jawab, nak explore, nak articulate, so because these are common what we call that, a common universal Sharia indicator. Tetapi macam mana, how do we articulate those? So this is what my intention today. Okay, I hope I'm answering your question, Yazrin. Okay, and then I think that Nuina also mentioned that meaning decision is based on the circumstance balance. Yes, balance. I agree with you. We have to achieve balance. That is what in our body as well. If we don't have balance, if one of the elements in our is upset, we will be sick. We cannot see because our eye is in pain, and so on and so on. So it requires balance. Alhamdulillah, today Allah has given me a balanced body that I can breathe, I can talk, and I can present. So the balance is very important. How do we balance? So depend in practice of architecture. We have to see whether we fulfill the budget or not, and then we have to ensure that within the budget, the 60%, 70%, how do we percentage? We have fulfilled, like I just explained to you, the toilet just now. And I did mention, I did qualify myself that there is no perfect design of house that fulfill all aspect. Kalau fulfill all aspect, Alhamdulillah. I say Alhamdulillah. Tapi the percentage has to be higher than 60, 70 or 80. Just now I highlighted in the case of the apartment, I think it's only 5% deficiency of the design, except the inside the house. I've been living there 10 years. I think it's fantastic. 10% too, it require fine tune here and there. Okay. Okay. Any questions? Have I answered all questions? I tried my best.
Yeah, I think the speakers already responded to all the questions. Okay, so in our chat box actually. Okay, we just have about 3 minutes, or actually 5 minutes, because we started just now quite 5 minutes late. Okay, we still allow participants to write down their questions in the chat box. Okay, while waiting for that, so maybe I would like to respond on this because by Yazrin, what are the possibilities of revamping our architecture education, especially for Islamic University like UIA and USIM? Okay, so basically the efforts towards integrating Islamic content in our syllabus, especially in UIA and USIM, is already there actually. Because if I say from the UIA perspective for the Kuliah of Architecture, when we studied the content of our syllabus, basically there are Islamic input are already there, and on top of that, the students are required to take the university required courses. That is all on the philosophical part, on the theories part, that been exposed to the student already, and then that university required courses are being enforced again at the kuliah level when the content is integrated with the Islamic input. But this ideal situation is not free from issues and challenges lah. We are improving. Okay, we are doing the reviewing of our syllabus, But unlike USIM, I think they are quite, they are the pro and cons, they are the advantage, because USIM, the student intake is already from the religious secondary school. Okay, the feeder is already coming from the student who already have a basis on the Islamic studies. Okay, unlike UIA. So actually, if you study the structure for the built environment under UIA and USIM, there are the plus minus pro and cons actually. But the effort is towards that. But if you say that to go through 2 years of study in the field of fiqh and now what we are doing is actually instead of going 2 years, but now we go concurrent. Okay, we go concurrent. Because we also need to fulfill the requirement of the professional body. So what we did is that while taking the professional course, at the same time, we also impose the university required courses, and then we will try to integrate these two kind of knowledge throughout that 4 years or 5 years of studies. Okay, so that is the approach taken so far. And maybe I can respond a bit on the Mustafa Kamal Zulkarnain. If we are given a 10-minute Sharia compliant design, how would you organize, Dr. Razali? Okay, this is basically, if you, okay, that's why we really hope that our professional, we can work hand in hand to know about the Sharia compliant. So given a 10 minutes time, if we already have a basis, I think we won't have any problem to analyze, to give ideas in terms of the Sharia compliant design. Simply put, like for example, toilet design. I discussed with the students, with the staff here. You just imagine Islamic Principles saying that we enter the toilet with left leg. Okay, kaki kiri masuk toilet. That is what been recommended in Islam. So how the design would be? So definitely our right hand yang akan tolak pintu. So that it will influence the position of the pintu toilet. Okay, that is one aspect. Another thing, Islam says that istinja is by using left hand. So we have to make sure that our right hand will be handling the hose. Okay, as simple as that, basically.
The hose is not falling.
And then the hose is not falling on the floor, that because this is about cleanliness. So we have to be very careful in terms of locating the hose, the height of the hose. Okay, so as simple as that actually. So about the floor, how to make sure that the water is not bertakung. Because when we talk about cleanliness, taharah, that is what we should imagine, and then we will challenge our creativity to comply to those principles. Okay, so I think
I would like to Dr. Zina. I think I would like to respond, not respond I would like to highlight that Dr. Nuida has already clarified in the chat box how our IIUM students are being taught, which is integrating, as what Dr. Azila mentioned, that the students have university required courses that touches on many aspects of Islamic knowledge, but application is another. So we do have students from Islamic school with basis. Okay, thank you, Dr. Nuina. And why not do 1 year foundation studies with intensified studies? I think this, as I said, have to further deliberated. I think you are right, Mustafa Kamal Zulkarnain from YouTube. So why not do 1 year foundation? It's possible. It's possible. That is very good idea that we can get. But somehow or other, being an architect, we are well aware that we must be able to understand the professional parts. These are the added values or the niche area for that particular university. The department has to go. No point of sometimes well versed in the Islamic principle, but you always be questioned how to implement. How have you done anything? For me, I have done, at least my toilet is really dry. I enjoy it very much, So that applies. So I'm very thankful with the understanding of knowledge and how do I implement, even though it's small job, but it's fulfilling. That's what I'm trying to do. It is possible, Brother Mustafa Kamal. Thank you.
We thank you for your concern and then raise this matter lah. So it can be further thought about your suggestion to have 1 year as a foundation rather than just a chat in the lift. Okay. So I appreciate your concern and your interest, Brother Mustafa Kamal Zulkarnain. Okay, so I think we come to the end of the session already because we started at 9:37 just now and then now already 11:37. So I would like to thanks again to our speaker, Assistant Professor Architect Dr. Razali Arifin for making the effort here and then for spending time with us, with all the participants. Hopes the knowledge that we imparted today will benefit us a lot towards Islam and the built environment. Okay, hope the participant will join again in our next series. Okay, so there is a request here for group photo.
Is it possible?
Please.
Do you have any video over there? Camera.
Foto.
Kalau tak boleh tak apa. It's okay. Okay. Latin is that. Okay. So what about the rest? Umar Rafi'i, Hatta, Dr. Nurul Hamiruddin. Is it possible? Sudikah anda untuk bergambar dengan saya? Buat kenang-kenangan.
Request from our speaker.
Kalau boleh lah.
Yeah, thank you also to architect who Ken here. I can see some of the non-Muslim here.
Who Ken, our student.
Yeah, we appreciate your presence in our webinar series.
All right, are we ready? Let me try to count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, kejap. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. I got it.
Okay, so thank you. With that, thanks again. Do join us again. So, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.